Alright, hello and welcome back to another deck profile. I don't know why I had to pause to remember what I was doing. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? But this is the first live one in a while, so that's pretty exciting, I guess. But anyway, this is Magnet Warriors. I've done this once before on the channel, which was actually for the worst deck of all time series, but this one is substantially different from that original build, and definitely a lot better with some new cards we've gotten and with links which help in some ways and hurt in other ways for this deck. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. Starting things off, we have 3 copies of Berserkion, the big boss monster of the deck, essentially our ABC Buster Dragon, except we have to have him in hand and not just in the X deck. Going through this, if you look at this deck compared to ABC, you'll notice a lot of what makes ABC good not featured in this deck. But so the only advantage this has over Buster is you can actually banish pieces from hand, field, or grave. So whereas Buster is just field and grave, this can actually banish from hand as well. And it's has an effect to by banishing a Magnet Warrior from grave, you can pop 1 card your opponent controls, and that is also not a once per turn. So that is pretty good, although he can't tag out. Whenever he's destroyed by a battle or card effect, then he specials back 1 each of the banished pieces. If he could at least tag out so you could gain the free advantage of them, that'd be great, but a lot of times you have to kind of do the work yourself with a break sword or something to actually get that effect to go off, as long as your opponent reads it. After that, we have 3 copies of Alpha. All of the level 3 Magnet Warriors have an effect that on your opponent's turn, you can tag them out into a level 4 Magnet Warrior, which we just run 3 copies of Delta for. But he on summon searches Berserkion, and that's essentially it. We have Beta, who on summon searches any of the other Magnet Warrior pieces. And we have Gamma, who on summon specials another one from hand. So you can see they kind of work together. Like a common opening is to summon Gamma into Beta to search an Alpha for next turn, and that sets you up with a defensive rank 3 play. But there's no things like ABC where you can just set up and have advantage and keep specialing on your opponent's turn and things like that. It's just nowhere near that level of consistency or craziness. But after that, we do have 3 copies of Delta. On summon, he foolishes another Magnet Warrior from the deck to the grave. I don't know why I said deck to the grave, I said foolish, that's what that is. But he foolishes another Magnet Warrior, but he's a level 4. So the most we're going to be using him for is link plays, although he is still a Magnet Warrior name in grave, so you can banish him for Berserkion. So he's free resources to actually pop your opponent's resources. And just on your opponent's turn, say you have a Beta and a Gamma already, you can tag out one of those for him. That gets you an Alpha into grave, which means if you have a Berserkion, that Berserkion is now live. So leaving just one of the smaller pieces on field isn't as terrible as you'd think, because we have Delta to actually set ourselves up for next turn. This deck is a very slow turn 1 setup, but actually explodes from there, thanks to him and a few other cards. We have 3 copies of Mythic Water Dragon, which if you control Earth Monster, you can just special this guy from hand. And we actually do run a level 8 Earth Gemnite monster. And we have Berserkion as well, so this can facilitate some free rank 8 plays essentially. We have 2 copies of Gemnite Obsidian, which he can add a normal monster back from, that DT looks amazing with his lighting. But anyway, he can actually add a normal monster back from grave to hand or something along the likes, but he's just a level 3 Gemnite, so he can still work, and he's a rock as well, so he can work for Mrs. Radian's rank 3 plays, things of that nature. And for things to send off Brilliant Fusion, we have 1 copy of Trickclown for Sarachknight and 1 copy of Sentry Soldier of Stone for Zirconia. Now this can be any rock monster, but I'm running 1 of him just because, say you don't need to use it to set up a piece, you can just send him and he's a free special if you only control rock type monsters. So at the beginning of the turn, when you do your first normal summon of a Magnet Warrior or something, you can just special him out for free and then use him for links or rank 3s, things of that nature. And obviously Trickclown just specials back and gets you a free link play there. Moving on to the spells and traps, we have 3 copies of the field spell and 2 copies of terraforming for it as well. Now the field spell is nowhere near as good as Union Hanger is, but it still is pretty good for the deck. Now the main thing it does is if you control a level 4 or lower Earth Rock type monster, you can special 1 level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster in your graveyard. So it lets you trigger any of their effects basically, and also after damage calculation, if a Rock type monster battled an opponent's monster that turn but the opponent's monster was not destroyed, you can return that opponent's monster to the hand, which no one online reads that. So I guarantee you when you play this deck, 50% of the time people will swing into one of your pieces, you'll bounce the monster that he's back, and they'll quit the game, which is always pretty funny indeed. But this just works well because in this deck we have 4 Foolishes in 3 copies of, actually 7 Foolishes with Delta, Foolish, and Brilliant Fusion, which can also send any of them. So this essentially lets us use those resources we're sending to the grave, and just lets us set up a lot better than if we weren't sending things to the grave. So it's not strictly essential, but most of the time if you're going off, you are going to have this card on the field. Like I was saying, we have 1 copy of Foolish and 3 copies of Brilliant Fusion, which can either act as the double summon and 2 free monsters like normal, or 2 free monsters without the double summon, which can be used for a Mrs. Radiant. Obviously, if you go Zirconia, it can be used for a rank 8 play. It can be used for a Mrs. Radiant with a Sentry Soldier. It can be used to Foolish any of your pieces, so there's a lot of options there. And obviously, Seraphinite, if you just have some stuff in hand you want to get out, like, null summon a Delta to Foolish something, and then go ahead and, null some pieces back, or null on, pieces back from there. You can null a Gamma, get another one out. So you can also go off fairly well with that. So we actually have options with Brilliant Fusion, which is nice and new. But anyway, after that, we are banishing cards pretty consistently as, it's how we bring out our boss monster. So we're running 2 copies of Different Dimension Reincarnation. Also, we have some stuff, obviously we have a Dead Trick Clown or a Sentry Soldier, or just some extra pieces in hand, like a Delta or something. We're not worried too much about ditching stuff from hand. A lot of time we can just bring it back off of our field spell anyway. And this lets us trigger effects of ones that we just banished from grave and didn't use that turn, or to, set ourselves up on the next turn to get going again. So it is a lot of resources, but I definitely do like it in the deck. And to get those resources back, we have 2 copies of Desires, because this is essentially like ABC, where you're running a lot of 3-ofs for things. And a lot of time, you just resolve Brilliant Fusion or anything you want to resolve first that might need cards in deck, and then activate this afterwards. There's not many times where I've had to activate this first, and if you do, again, your decks, at least the essential parts of it are 3-ofs, so it doesn't hurt even to banish 2 of them sometimes. Moving on to the traps, we have 2 copies of Magnet Conversion. Now, when this is in the grave, you can, except the turn it's sent there, you can banish it to special a banished Magnet Warrior from your banished, special banished Magnet Warrior. I don't know why I'm trying to over-explain things here. But also, whenever it's set, you can target up to 3 level 4 lower Magnet Warrior monsters in your graveyard and add them back to your hand. So this also works really well with Delta, because even if you just null summon him, that can get you a beta for next turn, which is anything. Or if you go, say, Gamma into beta, you can tag out for a Delta, send an Alpha, add back like a Gamma and an Alpha to make a play for next turn. So this lets you set yourself up fairly well with Delta. It's obviously not ideal because it's pretty slow, but if they don't kill you and you resolve this, chances are you're going to be going off pretty well. And because this deck does like to go first, with one of our rank 3s that we can set up pretty easily, we have 2 copies of Strike and 1 copy of Solemn Warning. No explanation really needed there. And that rounds off the main deck. Moving on to the extra, we're starting off with the most important cards. We have 2 copies of Breaksword. Let's move that right over there. And we have 2 copies of Gorgonic Guardian. Now, we all probably know what Breaksword does, but Gorgonic Guardian requires 2 level 3 rock type monsters. And once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach 1 material from it to target 1 monster. I believe it's on the field, or is it your opponent controls? 1 monster your opponent controls. Its attack becomes 0 and its effects are negated until the end of the turn. And it has a secondary effect where on your turn you can target 1 monster on the field with 0 attack and destroy it. So that can be used to clear some dead Gem Knights you have off of your Brilliant Fusion, if that's something you have to do. Or it can be used obviously during damage step. to kind of mess with your opponent there. You can use it as disruption to negate their effect. So if we're going first, turn 1, we will most likely be setting this up. Now turn 2, that's when we really look to Breaksword, because this deck kind of functions in the same way that ABC used to function with Diamond Direwolf, where you could special your pieces back, and if you had Hanger Up, you got 2 Diamond Direwolves for free. This deck is the same way, where because we want to get our pieces engraved, we want something that can clear the materials from underneath of itself. And Breaksword fills that role perfectly, where we can just take 2 of our pieces and use it to bait out strikes and things before we actually summon our Berserkion. Also, because Berserkion doesn't have to be destroyed by your opponent's card effect, if you have a Link monster up, you can actually use Breaksword to pop your Berserkion and something on your opponent's end of the field, special back all 3 pieces, and then make some more rank 3 plays from there, and hopefully drop another Berserkion from hand. In the craziest turn I've had with this deck, I actually resolved 2 Breakswords and summoned 3 Berserkions and popped 3 things with the last Berserkion. So I actually cleared 5 cards off the field and still ended with a Berserkion. I believe I pushed for game right after 2. I can't remember exactly, it was too hyped to remember. But that's those, and moving on from there, we just run 2 more rank 3s, 1 in Levier, because again, we're banishing stuff. It's nowhere near as good in Link format. But again, if we have some Link monsters up through a Brilliant Fusion or something, it can work out pretty well. And 1 copy of Nightmare Shark, just in case we have to, get that quick 2k in for game. For our rank 8s, we have 1 copy of Felgrand. And here's where things start to get suboptimal, just because I don't have every single card. We're running 1 copy of Lancelot, which should be 1 copy of Hope Harbinger. At the end of this, I'll put a little picture of the ideal extra deck on the screen. But for now, I'll just go through what I'm rolling with. For our fusions, we have the Zirconia and the Seraphonite. Not much explanation needed there. He's just a vanilla, but he's level 8. He lets us send rocks for foolishness, things like that. And Seraphonite's just free monsters and a double summon. For our links, this is probably the most suboptimal part, and this extract is actually going to get a lot better with the Link Vrains pack and all that once we have like the BA Link and stuff, because the BA Link's just level 3s, and lets your fools level 3s. So that turns any 2 of your Magnet Warriors into 3 of your Magnet Warriors, so your Berserkion's always going to be alive pretty much. So that will be pretty cool. But just rolling with what we have, 1 copy of Ningirsu because he's, Scrap Dragon. It sucks that he doesn't destroy actually on your side of the field. It's great that he's non-targeting send, but it sucks on your side of the field since you can't actually trigger a Berserkion off of him. But he's just my favorite Link monster to have, just because he's an out to essentially almost anything. 1 copy of Decode Talker. Obviously he's Decode Talker. He's the best generic Link 3 we have right now. If his arrow was down, he'd be amazing, but that's for another day. We have 1 copy of Mrs. Radiant. This should be 2 copies of Mrs. Radiant for sure. I just sold all my bulk and don't happen to have another one, as I really haven't bought much of the newer sets. But obviously it's super easy to make in the deck, clears your field, and gives you a boost. There are a lot of turns where I will make 2 of these, just because it puts your Berserker up to 4k and crazy things like that. 1 copy of Ib and 1 copy of Proxy Dragon for some other Link 2s, just to round things off there. But anyway, that will do it for our second look at Magnet Warriors here on the channel. This one's definitely a lot better. It's a very fun deck. It's still one of my low-key all-time favorites. It's like when I pick it back up, it's never for long. Even though I do love it, because it's just not good enough to compete. Like I was playing this against ABC, and it's just so obvious, the short end of the stick that this deck got. But it's still definitely very fun in a more casual sense. But again, it takes like a very slow turn 1 of setup that isn't enough to really, stop your opponent from, setting up their board. That's going to prevent you from going off next turn. But if you do get through that turn 1 of setup and can actually go off, it is insanely explosive. It's very surprising how much this deck can actually go off. Hopefully I'll have some replays of that up here shortly. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to stop rambling on about it now. I'll do the usual plugs at the end of the episode. Let's do them quick. Link to the Discord down in the description. Chat about Yu-Gi-Oh! Other things, cool place to hang out, all that. what else is there? The Patreon, yeah. If you want to give me money for the stuff I do, there's a link down there as well. It gets you extra duels and stuff. No usual content's gonna be gated off, but if you have extra to give, it'd be greatly appreciated. I'm tired and anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.